right, and we're speaking here with Paz Gomez. Paz, how are things today?
Hi, Yael. Nice to be here. And well, everything's fine. I'm happy from being in the program.
Perfect. So, to give a little bit of a background to some of those who are listening, let us know a little bit about you, where you are, stuff that you work on. I know you have many affiliations, you have a lot of experience. So, yeah, let us know the latest on you.
Well, I am from Quito, Ecuador. I have made a master in blockchain and cryptocurrency in the Nicosia University in Cyprus. So, I have been in the cryptocurrency world, working and learning about that before 2018. And right now, I am professor at the FTM University in Mexico with an online course on blockchain applications. And I am also coordinating the academic part of a think tank, a classic liberal think tank here in Ecuador.
Oh, that is beautiful. La libertad por todos. So, the course, what are the normal kinds of students who'll sign up for this course to learn from you?
There is a diversity of students. The last course that I gave, it was a lot of computer engineers. So we basically provided them what they don't know, that is the project design part of the blockchain applications. But you can also find economists, you can find people that are working in banks, for instance, and want to know how blockchain can relate to banks and things like that.
Oh boy, I guess that's very timely with some of these bank failures, huh?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. But of course, we're trying to also provide these. I think that it's great to have the opportunity for them to see blockchain and cryptos from another perspective, and not the perspective that maybe is the opposite of traditional system and things like that.
Okay, so it's more about in integration, and
Exactly.
that is one reason why I wanted to bring you on, because I know you've not only studied this, but you've looked at the particular use cases of people who are actually using things like Bitcoin throughout Latin America. And you had one article of note that I'll put in the show notes about Argentina, which is a very interesting case. We know that it's true that there is a lot of Bitcoin that is being used there. There's also a lot of people who are using Tether, who are using stable coins and perhaps some other cryptocurrencies. Starting at Argentina, or I guess let's zoom out without talking about Central America, because we'll get there. But looking at South America, what is sort of the general Bitcoin landscape for some of these places? Are there places where you have a lot of trade, but the regulations are not there yet, or a lot of people using this, perhaps getting money from abroad, or how is that mostly working?
Well, as you say, basically, Argentina is now the case that probably they are using the most. You also have the case of Venezuela, of course. However, there is more difficult to people access and change cryptocurrencies a bit. There you have also Bolivia, and in Ecuador. Actually, according to chain analysis, is now the fourth South American country that uses cryptocurrency a lot. So, and well, Brazil is also expanding its adoption a lot. And the reason, it's interesting also to see what are the reasons behind this adoption. So in Venezuela and Argentina, for instance, you see basically is define the status quo because their monetary systems are weak and they have a lot of inflation and their currencies are devalued. Also in Argentina, what happened, and that is why right now Argentina is the king, basically in this sense, is that the government put a lot of regulations to the exchange between the Argentine peso and the dollar. And then a lot of Argentines just realized that it was better to have their money in the internet. So they basically use a lot of Bitcoin for transactions, around the world, and they also usually work remotely to gain in dollars. And then they exchange that not to the dollar, not to the peso, but to a stable coin, just to keep the value of their money, and then they continue interacting with that. They are also basically operating with Binance and credit cards and things like that, so they don't even need to put the money in the Argentine jurisdiction to avoid, so they can avoid excessive taxes, excessive regulations, some things like that. And well, the Brazilian case is also like the opposite, because it has been an interesting case in which the regulators have been open to fintech technology for more than a decade, and they started providing some open banking and fintech regulations that are basically definitions, and just to allow this to happen, this ecosystem to work in parallel to the traditional banking system and things like that. And just the beginning of this year, they approved the first crypto law that is for regulating crypto exchanges, and also allowing, for example, Bitcoin ETFs. And there you have, for instance, Nubank, that is a neobank. It is just a completely digital traditional bank. But this year they started also offering the crypto exchange platform, and it is quite successful. So there you can also see that simple rules and fewer rules can also be beneficial for the system. I can also talk you about Ecuador. Ecuador is also a different case, because here we use the US dollar. That is the legal tender in Ecuador. And we have not lived the inflation scenarios that many other countries are living right now. In Latin America, we are also feeling inflation, but in Ecuador, it has been stable. But there has been a lot of political instability, and that has made people decided not to invest in the country, because you don't know what is going to happen next. And many people is moving the money outside. What is the problem? That we have a tax for moving the money outside. So it is easier to have the money in cryptos and then do whatever you want. And I guess that is one of the reasons why here we have increased the adoption in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as well.
And reading from your article, and I think these numbers are from last year, but you have the cryptocurrency withdrawals by the various coins. Bitcoin at 63% in Argentina. You have Tether at 23%. Ether at 23, Tether at 10, and Solana at 2. I assume that's at 0 by now, which is its real value. But looking at some of that, are there some of the stuff that you've picked up on? Are there nuances in the debate between using something like Bitcoin and something like, I guess, Ether? Because I think everyone fairly knows the difference between the stable coins and Bitcoin. People want to have access to the US dollar. It's a bit hard to get it, or the government makes it more difficult in the case of Argentina. But then you have all these other sort of crypto tokens, and there's an entire ecosystem that exists around Ethereum, and it's been there for a while, and you do have a lot of growth there, particularly with all the NFT stuff and all the various chains that use ERC as well. Do you see any nuance in that kind of debate in some of the Latin American countries?
Well, there is first one factor that, of course, boosts adoption on any cryptocurrency is the accessibility to the currency. And that is something important here in Latin America, where connectivity, internet infrastructure, and also the access to banking is not universal. So in that sense, of course, Bitcoin and in the second, Ethereum, just as following global trends, are the most important ones, because, for instance, here in Ecuador, there is just one crypto exchange that is registered and regulated. And fees are high, and so you of course probably go to just informal people that exchange that money, and that you know because someone suggested you, so you don't like, is also this informal part of the crypto exchange. And in that sense, of course, you're going to get, for instance, a better fees for exchanging those cryptos in the ones that are more used. So, for instance, these people that exchange is going to have more money also to exchange for you. So that is one reason. I guess that the other reason is also because it is probably is the same, because here as we don't have these crypto exchanges, we use credit cards for having the money in the crypto exchange, or we use some kind of platform. And for instance, PayPal doesn't work here in Ecuador, but PayPal supports some kind of, or Coinbase supports some kind of cryptocurrencies. So that will also be important for users in Latin America to say we use this or this platform. The case of Argentina, for instance, as you say, is 1 year before. And I guess that Solana has this 2% and is present here because some crypto exchange or some remote jobs platform supports Solana and makes it easier for Argentines to use Solana. And if you remember, in that moment, Solana was a good alternative when Ether was with high fees. So maybe we have to see what is going on right now with Solana after so many attacks and everything, but it is probably related with which platform support which cryptocurrencies. And of course, another reason why a lot of Latin Americans are using cryptocurrencies, and this is something important, is remittances, because migration continues to be a driving force for the economy of many countries, and at the same way, the remittances come into Latin American countries. Many people are resorting to cryptocurrencies for these remittances, and then of course you have the same. If you are working in some country with more developed ecosystem of the cryptocurrencies, like the United States, like some European country, probably you are going to resort to a registered cryptocurrency for the cryptocurrency exchange for doing this, for a cryptocurrency wallet that is registered. And then you're going to use these cryptocurrencies that are more common, and that you know that your relative in the other country is going to have the chance to exchange them. So I guess that is that. And of course, the Tether is, I guess, that the preferred stable coin in Latin America, in every country. I have talked with people of many countries, and most of them, I quite do not, I don't trust at all or that much in Tether, but I have seen that a lot of people, in Latin America use it a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, there's the company Strike, which is an American finance company, Bitcoin company. They've sort of made their pitch in that, this is for people who would like to send remittances, and they have specific programs and accounts now in Argentina, and then also with the Philippines. Like I think that was just announced recently. And the idea was simple. If you have family that's back home, they can open up their Strike account and they're able to get Bitcoin over Lightning or Bitcoin on chain directly to their phone, and they're able to use it. You mentioned the article as well a little bit about people working for things like Bitcoin, particularly for Argentinians. Is that something that is still happening a lot more? Or do you have a lot of people who are working for either foreign companies or other companies and getting paid, and if not Bitcoin, then some other type of cryptocurrency?
Yes, as I say, you can see the main example in Argentina. What happens in Argentina, and it's not common in all the Latin American countries, is that you have a high qualified workforce. Argentina has a good English level as well, for instance. But right now in Ecuador, I can also tell you that economic opportunities are not that good. Probably they are dwindling. And remote jobs have become something important as well. And what you can find these kind of jobs. Of course, after the pandemic, people became also more tolerant to remote jobs, to work from home and things like that. And there is also this new wave that you have to learn to develop a blockchain code and make smart contracts and things like that, because there is where what people want to hire. So this is growing. What happens here and probably happens in other countries is that, for instance, here in Ecuador is different because you have dollars. You use the US dollar. So probably you will prefer to work remotely for in your country or outside your country, but receive it in dollars, because at the end, you don't have to exchange, so the fee is not that high. But in other countries, and right now with the devaluation of most currencies, probably you will prefer that. Another country that you can see this phenomenon is Colombia, where they are also there is great workforce that know about blockchain and smart contract development in Colombia. So this is also becoming a trend there.
Interesting. Yeah. And one part about the dollarization, there's the Pan Am Post, an outlet you might be familiar with. I wrote an article there in 2014 where I did say that Ecuador and El Salvador should ditch the dollar for Bitcoin. At the time, I thought it was a kind of out there idea. You know, we often have these things when we're in the ideas space. And, you know, I sort of made the case of, well, you know, they don't control their own money anyway. You might as well just go to a decentralized network where you're able to, you know, carry value across time and space. And, you know, I did not think that it would actually happen in our lifetime. So we have El Salvador now, which has Bitcoin as legal tender. And there have been a couple episodes that we've talked about how problematic that has been for some of the international banking elite. And many of the laws, particularly in the United States, they've had to change some things because basically how it goes down is in some states, they say, hey, you can have foreign currencies. You can use some foreign currencies that are legal tender. Well, now that Bitcoin is legal tender in El Salvador, they kind of have to change the laws to make sure they don't have some loophole. But, you know, what is sort of what's the attitude now? What's the general outlook onto the sort of Bitcoin experiment in El Salvador? And I think I'll ask that question independent of an assessment on Bukele and you know, his whether or not he passes liberal muster. But in terms of adoption of Bitcoin itself, how has that been on the outside, particularly in Latin American sort of view?
Well, aside from Bukele, I would say that from a libertarian perspective, which I'm an advocate for, I would say that it is basically a top-down policy. And probably that is why we are experiencing the problems that happened with Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador. For one side, if you see from from other countries and from the Bitcoin enthusiast perspective, probably this looks like a great experiment and some kind of Central American paradise with great riches in which you are going to be able to spend in Bitcoin. But if you see the inside part, and if you got to rural areas in El Salvador and ask normal citizens what is going on, actually there is a lack of confidence on Bitcoin, and especially on all the infrastructure network that the government established for it. What is the infrastructure network? First, the Chivo wallet, that people, even if people don't understand what is Bitcoin, people know about these things, and they know that their privacy is in risk with a centralized wallet like Chivo, that was even made with some kind of Venezuelan technical support that we don't know who they are. So That is the first reason why this has not been widely adopted in the country. The second, of course, the policy and this experiment came in a moment in which the cryptocurrency market was not thriving. So the El Salvador wasted more than $200 million in all the process. And probably what the citizens are looking is that the value of all this has decreased, and what is going to happen? What is next? We don't know. Probably in some moment these savings can also increase their value and appreciate because Bitcoin appreciates as well. But at the moment, they only see that this is lower. And well, actually, with a colleague that it was my degree, we did a paper that is about to publish in a behavioral economics books about DeFi, in Latin America, and how this is working around these different countries. And we actually made some interviews to Salvadorians. And what I am telling you were basically their answers. We don't trust in these policies. We don't trust in the Chiva wallet. I created the account in the Chiva wallet to get the $30 that they were giving, but then I just exchanged that because the government provides this easy exchange system, and then I haven't used anymore this Chiva wallet. So this is something that happens when, of course, now maybe we have to include in the debate the thing about Bukele. He is not providing enough confidence on people, especially on how in those things that the people wants to have control of. And of course, you want to have control on your money. So probably that is why Salvadorians are not using it a lot. And also there is something that happens in general, and this is quite interesting in Ecuador. Some years ago, I think it was in 2015 or 14, the government also tried to do, like, it is cataloged in some places like the first TBDC. So they try to do this experiment because the government here doesn't have the chance to manipulate the money because we use the US dollar. So they were trying to do this parallel currency where they can play a little bit and get advantage of. And people didn't use it. 2 years later, the electronic money was dead. So probably you see the same in El Salvador. They have decided to use Bitcoin, like, to provide more confidence. And of course, it is also a way in which Bukele can attract foreign investment without ensuring legal certainty and all these kind of things that comes with traditional foreign investments. But he can only go and appeal to Bitcoin investors and Bitcoin enthusiasts and have this cash flow going on. I don't know how this is working. I like how many Bitcoin enthusiasts are actually investing or going to El Salvador. I have heard about some people, but not a lot. So I don't know how this part is working. But if you see the social-political part of this thing, it is not working.
Yeah, I think overall, I would definitely agree with sort of your assessment in that doing it in a top-down way is sort of contrary to what Bitcoin, promised us when it was first released and put out there by Satoshi. And to have this tied up in sort of the hands of a populist politician is very interesting. I looked at the last numbers, and again, you never know about public opinion polling and stuff like that. And numbers are usually pretty cooked. But I think it says like 91% approval rating. Again, I don't know who they're interviewing or who's doing these. But I wanted to ask that because I think amongst the Bitcoiner crowd, I think it's kind of split. You have those that are big enthusiasts, as you say, who say, hey, look at what's happening in El Salvador. We have legal tender. This is great. We've achieved what we want. And there are a lot of people who tie up Bitcoin's fortune to perhaps governments around the world adopting it. And on the other end, there's the sort of skeptical angle of, well, we don't know much about Bukele. Doesn't seem like this is the most liberal democratic dude ever. He's not somebody who can quote Mises and Hayek and, can do all kinds of stuff about social freedoms. But he talks a good game. And I know that for a lot of people who've attempted to track just the Bitcoin treasury of El Salvador, it's been very difficult. And it hasn't really been as audible as people thought it would be, even though technically you should be able to see that stuff on chain. They've only been able to track it by him announcing on Twitter that he bought the dip or something like this. And I think that's where I would hope that the people of El Salvador kind of know that too. And there are some people who are traveling there and investing there. You have Max Kaiser, this guy apparently got a citizenship. And I see a couple of people who are either on Twitter or Nostr or something who are traveling there. And there's like a few conferences that people are trying to do. So you have that, but they're normally just going to El Zonte, to the sort of Bitcoin beach area. So you're not seeing, a grand swell of things, because I think everything that happened with the gangs, I think that still perturbs a lot of people. I mean, this particular area, the type of violence that you saw, well, to be frank, these days you might have the same in Los Angeles, and more, it's probably worse there now. But for the law and using it, one thing that I have heard, and I've seen a few documentaries, is that it's actually very difficult for people to use Bitcoin in El Salvador. There are these isolated communities, El Zante and some others. But if you're in the capital and you want to go buy bread at the store, most of the time, even though legally I guess they're supposed to, you're not really going to find too many people who are going to accept Bitcoin.
Yes. I'm going to go in order. First, I guess that one thing that is probably a red flag on all this process is that the policy was debated. Well, the law was debated in the Congress for 3 hours, and then it passed. And then 3 months later, you had all this there. And then Bukele bought Bitcoin for the state of El Salvador, just using his cell phone. So you see, probably that is fine for everything else, but you also see that the Republican state has its institutions, has its separation of powers, had its counterbalances and things like that. And of course, these are two different concepts. And as you said before, the philosophy behind Bitcoin is not that one. And we have Bitcoin has this sense of giving the money to the people. And of course, something that a lot of cryptocurrency experts says, and I guess that you defend in your podcast, is maintain your money in cold wallets, so in non-custodial wallets. So of course, that is another thing in which this is not the best, because what actually the government of El Salvador is promoting is to holding it in the Chivo wallet, using the exchange platform of the government, and of course, how this incentivizes it is because you are going to have immediate exchange by using it, and that you have the crypto ATMs across the country. Actually, there are more than 200 crypto ATMs right now in El Salvador. So probably it could be accessible. What is also the problem that in Latin America, and especially in rural areas, cash is the king. So people has not trusted until now, even in debit or credit cards. And then you only say like, yes, the money is going to be somewhere without the explanation and everything, but they don't have the paper. And in some zones in Latin America, the paper continues to be very important. We know that the paper is nothing, but yeah, that is what people trust, and there is also this part of the social construction process and the social evolution process that is there, and that is why the top-down policy is an issue there.
One thing that's interesting that now that you mention about Bukele, and his war on the gangs, since it is this sort of centralized, because you have the Chiva wallet, and we've heard of many of the issues and problems, and apparently it's so buggy, it's like impossible to use. If you have like a couple of the gang members there that are using the Chiva wallet to, send and receive Bitcoin from either people in the country or outside of the country, is that something that they're tracking? Are they working with chain analysis firms to, look on chain if this potential gang member through the KYC process received X amount? I can only assume that perhaps there are abuses there because it is a government system. And, this is what's so interesting is Bitcoin is about separation of money and state. And the scenario in El Salvador is it's kind of fused. And I would hope there would be a lot more sovereign usage, not your keys, not your coin, cold wallets and the like. But I don't know. I think I'd be a bit leery of using a Bukele wallet type of system where who knows who's tracking that.
Yeah, maybe it's Bukele, maybe it's the next government. You don't even know. And the thing is that you are creating a system that is there for potential oversight and everything. So since the Bitcoin perspective, as you have explained right now, it is not what we'd actually mean for it. The other thing about you were talking, probably what we can see, because also these monetary policies are long-run policies. And in that sense, probably the Bitcoin idea is not that bad. And probably you're going to see that next generations would be used to saving in Bitcoin, for instance. And that could be beneficial, but that is something that we can see probably 10 years from now. Actually, there is I'm telling you because that is something real here in Ecuador after dollarization. The saving rates and the financial health of people, of course, improved after having more than 10 years of a healthy currency system. So, or the most healthy that we can have. but yeah, so basically there is probably you can also see those benefits in the long run. And that is something that we just can wait and see what happens and what goes on, and how also all the CBDCs world and the stable coins and what is going to happen with cryptocurrency markets in the next years. And related to gangs, there is a lot of debate there. Like, some people say that Bukele just created this policy to favor gangs and negotiate with them, but that is also going into this discourse that Bitcoin is currency for gangs, and we have also seen that that transnational crime also prefers cash and also prefers dollars the most. So it's something that maybe it's true, maybe not, we don't know, but you can see these in either dollars or Bitcoins. But something that is real is the fact that Bukele doesn't want to fit in the international standards of what is financially politically correct, for saying like that. So he doesn't want to follow IMF standards, for instance, to access a loan there. So he prefers to do this alternative. He doesn't want to be seized by the international system if the United States issue sanctions against El Salvador. And he also doesn't want to be limited, restricted in his political actions, thinking on sanctions. So if his system, if the El Salvadorian system is supported by Bitcoin and not by the US dollar, probably citizens are going to suffer less if the US issues sanctions against El Salvador. So I guess that rather than gangs and crime, the most important reason behind why Bukele did this in 3 hours is because of his own benefits.
Wow. Yeah, it gives a lot to think about. And this is kind of a thing that happens when you're in the policy world, as you are as well in research, is that, we have you often have common friends and enemies, and you end up having some bad people on your team who you do have power and perhaps are doing things in a way that you wouldn't want, even though you might temporarily agree on whatever the goal is, or at least the ideal. Focusing more on your work, Paz, in terms of research, and you mentioned teaching this course, what are you most excited about when it comes to Bitcoin technology or some of the other crypto stuff? I mean, you talked up Solana a little bit before. I'll let that go. I only say that because Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, they basically owned half of Solana, and once FTX went bust, so did that network, and we've seen it, frozen a couple of times. It's just, if you do evaluate blockchains, A to F, and Bitcoin's an A, it looks like Solana's an F. I don't know, but what are you what are you kind of working on and teaching people about in your work?
Well, as I was telling you before the interview, I value the most Bitcoin, because I guess that for money, like, it was designed for money. So of course it has a simple script. It is a one purpose blockchain, and it focuses on security a lot, and using it for financial transactions and for savings and everything. I guess it's the best option. Well, but in my what I am doing right now is studying, analyzing, and teaching more about the blockchain technology, and how, of course, how all these evolves. That is something that changes every day. So is something that you have to keep studying and everything. But what I basically teach is how this technology can be applied to different industries. In the course, we provide a variety of different industries, but of course, I have some interest in one more than another. Something that really interested me is how DeFi, because DeFi is all this decentralized system in which you don't have someone to control, and it can become difficult to apply DeFi for financial inclusion, because you are talking about a vulnerable population that if the project is not good and defaults, this vulnerable population is going to lose their money. But I guess that is not impossible. So I have been analyzing and studying the things there. One thing that I like a lot of DeFi, of course, DeFi, even there are some smart contracts and some things that you can do with Bitcoin, the best option to do more things is Ethereum. And I believe that in that sense. But what it allows is this composability. So what is right now known as the money Legos or the DeFi Legos, that basically is use these smart contracts and these programs that already work to create some other things. I think that this is very disruptive in a lot of ways, because first, creators have a lot less barriers of entry. You are building on the things that others are building, and maybe you can use what already works, what is already proven with auditability, code auditions and things like that, to make something that works well for different population sectors, targets, etc. So that is why I am actually analyzing the most how we can use composability and all these DeFi programs to create something that could work for financial inclusion. I guess that financial inclusion, that decentralized finance can be like the leapfrog for this unbanked population, as the mobile has been in many rural areas that has not line phones before, or as M-Pesa, for instance, was in Africa. So I think that there is some opportunity there, and I have been studying that. In addition to that, Well, I guess that other thing that it's important for me is how we can apply blockchain in GovTech, and of course how governments or officials and policymakers are trying to integrate blockchain because of as just as Bukele does. Plenty of these regulators and authorities just use the words Bitcoin, blockchain, and everything as populism. They don't even know what is going on, and probably there you can also waste a lot of money if you don't know. And if you are using taxpayers' money, I guess that it is better to make decisions knowing it. Like in private business, you can fail and then repair whatever. But when you work with taxpayers' money now, so my idea is also to provide more support and guidance in the sense of what is better when it comes about using technology and especially blockchain technology in the policy sector.
All right. Well, I hope we can convince you, Paz, a bit more with the utility of Bitcoin for that. Here's a deal. I'll make you. People who are listening to this on Value for Value Podcasting 2.0 apps, these are special apps that you can download in your normal app store on your phone, Android or Apple. Examples are Fountain, Breeze, Castamatic, Podverse. People can stream Bitcoin directly to the program, and they can send Bitcoin Satoshis directly to the program as well. So we do get messages from people. We do get streaming sats. It's an entire new ecosystem and open standard. I will send you half of whatever we receive for this episode. So any of the Satoshis that are streamed, any of the Satoshis that are boosted along with messages, I will send to you, and love to follow up on how that is working. Because I think with our program from the beginning, we've done that. And I know Nico, podcast partner on his German language one, it's actually been pretty successful. And you can make pretty much a living doing that right now. I know that there are all kinds of different proposals out there, but hold me to it. I'll send you 50% of whatever Satoshis that we received today for this episode. How about that?
Awesome. That sounds pretty good. And as I say, of course, I'm a Bitcoin user. Actually, I guess that first, thanks so much for having me here in the program. I would like to say that I think very fortunate of being in this program that has had so many listeners in so a few time. But also, if you have seen like my Bitcoin transactions and where you have more, or crypto transactions and where you have more, of course, is Bitcoin, and I believe in Bitcoin. And I guess that also there is some pretty interesting developments in the last couple of years to make also Bitcoin the basis of the cornerstone of some other applications. And this has been, of course, something that has been able to do it with these, how do you say, these additional layers and things like that.
Yeah, like Lightning is the podcasting 2.0 stuff is all over exactly. Lightning, and exactly. There are side chains they're talking about.
There are many other things. And I guess that is something that we have to continue looking for, because you can take the advantage of the developments of the blockchain technology, but have the backing of the security and all these things that Bitcoin has. So we hope that also that can develop in the future. And I guess that there is a lot of developers doing that work.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we can do that a lot more. It's an open source system, so there's a lot of strange incentives that us normally as free market capitalists aren't used to, but it's something that does work very well. So Paz, I'll link to all of your social links and anything else. Any sort of closing thoughts to the audience before I let you go?
Well, I already thanked for being in the program, and I would say that this is an important moment for cryptocurrency, because we have had a moment of a bearish market and everything. Now it is becoming bullish again with Bitcoin reaching the 24,000. But we are also looking that the traditional system is not going that well with these recent bankruptcies and everything. And I guess that it is a moment that probably has not been similar in the history of Bitcoin before. And I say Bitcoin because it's the oldest one. So I guess that it is something that could boost adoption all around the world. And I guess that in Latin America, it would be very, very important. Inflation continues to be here, and devaluation continues to be in a lot of countries as well. And that is why I guess that there are so many opportunities also with international trade, also expanding again after the pandemic and everything. And maybe we can see also a lot of more transactions there. So yeah, probably saying that there's, I guess that the next months and years to come would be also beneficial in that sense.
Well, it's great to have you on our side, Paz. Thanks so much for taking the time, and I hope we can catch up with you here in a few months and find out how your research is going and see if Latin America is at last going to the moon.
Thank you for having me.